There you go.
You won't have to eliminate the hum.
Yes.
Jeff looks like he's been doing a show right down there in the corner, and
that's because my camera's over here, but this big screen is over here, so I'm going to look at everybody, and you can see my profile. Or I could just do I could show you what I used to have in my yard.
A virtual background.
These used to be my roommates.
Oh, that's nice.
All right, there you go.
We had a den of foxes underneath the garage.
All right.
And those are the kits. We had 4 of them, 4 kits. And then we started cleaning out the garage because we didn't want them to get anything in the garage. And that scared them. And I didn't realize this, but they always have 2 dens. And they they got rid of their starter home and went upstream somewhere. And
That's too funny.
Moved up to your place, Lawrence, and for a much bigger house and a much better house. And so we filled in with the gravel. I got to get the dirt this weekend to put on top, but I made sure no one was there for about a week before I filled anything in. But it was it was real cute seeing them.
Yeah.
But they stunk the garage to hell because they have that. They almost smell like a skunk, and it was pretty ripe.
Well, they haven't made the scene yet, but my nesting bluebirds were whispering in my ear that we don't want them yet. Keep them away for 2 more weeks.
My other option for a background is our newest granddaughter, who was born May 26th.
What a cutie.
Victoria. Victoria. So you can have that one too. So, but we've not been allowed to hold her. We've seen her a couple of times. We've been over there 6 feet away, but we haven't been able to do anything else. So those are my options. Or I could just let you see the basement.
The basement looks nice.
Lawrence knows the basement. He's been here a couple of times.
True. I'd leave the young one up. We need some youth in our organization.
Not quite that young. She couldn't help Brad at all with any of the sounds yet. Oh, speaking of which, for all you guys that may want to, there's a podcast called 20,000 Hertz, and it's all about sound. And some of it is spoken, some of it is sound effects kind of things. So like they had, it's about a 20 minute to half an hour podcast. It's kind of haphazard when it comes out, but they had like about a month or 2 ago, they had a 2-parter on Mel Blanc. And then,
that's fun.
And then right after that, they had the whole podcast on all of the original Star Wars sound effects and how they were created and how they were blended, all these different sounds to blend together to make this space sound. It was really, really cool.
Sounds interesting. That's 20,000 as in 20,000 HZ.
That's too many zeros.
Yeah, well, 20,000. In other words, it's the number, not the word.
Well, you can find it either way, but if you're in Apple, it is the number, not the word. I think.
Yeah. But, well, yeah, that's how.
But it's a nifty podcast. It's free, so you can listen.
Yeah,
at your own discretion.
Yeah,
and it's for those of us who like all this. All I could think about in a couple of those was the bushes, of just I could imagine, Mark and Marcia, if they had been in the right place at the right time, doing the same kind of thing for that kind of Star Wars of, take this sound and do this sound and put them on top of each other and blend them up and do all of that kind of stuff. Because, Mark has got such an ear for that kind of thing. And that's exactly what this guy was doing. He goes, that's kind of a cool sound by itself. And if I blend this sound in with it, it'll be the sound of those doors opening, and all that kind of stuff. It's a very interesting podcast, and people in this group might like it, so that's why I say something.
Definitely interesting, Jeff. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to give everybody greetings from the Kentuckiana Radio Addicts, which is our club here in Louisville. With Jim Cox. Jim Cox is a member. Some of you might know him, I'm sure, or at least his books. And I tell you what,
Couple of books.
I was excited when I was told that you were going to have a meeting tonight, and I look very forward to it. I'm sure I'll know some people here.
Oh,
I'm sure you'll have a good time here.
Yeah, welcome.
It's a fun group.
I think it
was
is.
real good. I understand that was the first one.
Last month was our first
was good.
online meeting. Yes.
Yes, it was good.
Thank you for inviting us again.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
There's Marcia. Hey.
Yep.
Hi, guys. My name is Robert Acosta. I'm a member of SPURDVAC out in California, and delighted to be here for the second time. You guys are great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us, Robert.
Robert, I'm also a member of SPURDVAC.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We remember well Friends of Old Time Radio. New Jersey was classic. I went for many years there.
I think I made about most of them.
Yeah.
David Siegel was a personal friend, and I mean, everybody in radio is good. Everybody's wonderful. There's no bad people on old time radio.
And our best to Jim Cox. He's a legend. Wonderful man.
We're starting to get some people.
We have people continuing to join, so this is very exciting.
It must be close to 7:30. We're starting to populate the computer screen here.
Yes, they're popping in like popcorn or something. It's really great stuff.
I was surprised. I was just coming in to kind of do a little test, and I was surprised that you'd already opened the room.
Well, after last time, I figured it was probably a good idea to get it started early, and also to make it possible for people to join before the host got there. I figured that would help everyone. So it's there's a learning curve on this Zoom stuff, but I love it. I think it's great stuff.
Is.
There he is.
Yes, Mr. 15.
And there's Jack. Oh, Jack, good background. I like it.
Yeah. The Encyclopedia of Old Time Radio, right behind you.
No, you've been working on that one.
I wore out my physical copy. I literally fell apart, so I had to download one for the iPad that I wasn't going to destroy. It literally, the first one I had just came apart. I was looking up too many people and too many shows, if there is such a thing.
I think the publisher kind of cheaply put that together because mine fell apart after a year, and I had to buy another one of Dunning's books.
Well, that's why I bought the online version, the e-version. That way I don't have to worry about it falling apart, and easier to search. I can do that pretty fast. So it's been nice to have.
Yes. Yeah, the online version, those are always great. It's especially if they really are accurate.
Moto E6. Copies. What's that for?
I'm not sure. I can rename.
It's our illustrious old leader and her husband. And she doesn't have her audio on, I don't think. She's talking, but I don't hear her.
She doesn't seem to have a mic attached to the computer. You've got video, but there's no mic option. You might have to telephone in to the meeting to get the audio.
Okay, I would like to sing. Todd says I have to sing what he requests.
This is Mike Taylor. I'm just going to be muting myself so I don't keep interrupting people, but I'm on two ways, Baltar and I'm the 301-490. So Signing off for the moment on audio.
So, and you're Mike Taylor, right?
Is here.
Well, there we go.
Is here, and I'm going to be on mute too because I'm at another event, so I'm double booked. But I didn't want to miss the meeting.
Edgar, we're supposed to be your first priority.
Dating.
I know.
Hello, everybody.
I think most people will end up muting once we're.
But see, I want to hear all the brilliant things that'll be presented, and I don't want to interrupt with me. But I just finished singing "You're the Top" and "Secret Agent Man" to great acclaim.
I think we needed you to do that for us too.
I'm what?
I think we needed you to do that for us too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Where's your mustache go?
Gosh, people are just showing. Hey, Sally.
Somebody let Abbott into the meeting. We got it.
Of course.
He got here really early.
There we go. Now we're all set up.
There you go.
There you are.
Hello.
Stuff.
Now we've got problems.
I'm sorry, but I got to check Edgar's tie.
He's got it. He's got his.
Got it, Edgar?
Yeah, he's got it.
All right, we're good. We can start now.
I'm glad to please you.
Okay.
This is for now. But I want to with my friend.
Are we
How do you actually, this is on
Cheers, it's the last day of school.
Woohoo! Yay! Great.
The question is, are you going to be able to go back?
Hello. Hello.
We're partying over here.
Wow, I bet you are. Oh, yes. Tying one on, Sally. Watch out. You have to run the quiz.
Oh, yes, I'm ready to be very professional, very serious.
I bet mine's bigger than yours.
She's going to run the quiz as WC
I got
Field.
some lightning water.
Not just plain old water.
Fire water.
Sally's going to be doing her impression of WC Fields to run the quiz.
I gotta be like that, the telephone ladies from like the 1940s.
Yeah.
Hello.
You could be Sarah Bernhardt or B. Benaderet on Jack Benny.
I've got to do no accent, the no accent ladies.
Yeah, in other words, you cannot telegraph your opinion of what the correct answer is.
What was the first radio program?
She's been practicing since yesterday.
It requires me to move like this, like a robot.
Can I have my other two computers on while we're doing the quiz?
That's my daughter.
That's why Jack has the Encyclopedia of Old-Time Radio right behind him. So we're going to see how he gets these 100% all the time.
We have audio coming out of our unit?
Yes.
Good.
We can hear you, Fred.
That's good.
Can you hear us?
Recording downstairs, and this is on a little Kindle. So
whoever said, "Can you hear us?" Yes, I heard you.
Thank you. It's Patricia Nickel.
Hi, Patricia.
Oh, wonderful.
Patty Nickel coming in
Hey,
from.
Patty.
Hi,
Patty.
hi. Okay, guys.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Tom Warren. Hello.
Oh,
Hello, Tom.
hi.
Hi.
And also hello to Martin and other people too, I'm sure.
I'm here.
Oh, many other people. Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you for allowing me to be here.
It's
we
our
have a
pleasure.
couple of I have a couple of telephone numbers that I don't recognize, and you're welcome to speak up and identify yourself.
It's Walden Hughes out here in Costa Mesa, California.
Hello, Walden.
Hey,
Walden,
Walden,
thank
thank you for playing jackpots for me today.
Yep, no problem.
Hey, Johnny.
And I totally forgot about it.
So did I.
Oh, no, I wanted to hear it.
Marsha.
Hello, Marcia.
Hello.
I'm toggling back and forth between two screens full of people.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm trying to figure out how to make this go on both screens, but it's not gonna. Doesn't want to.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to want to let you to sign in from two devices. I know.
25 per screen.
I sign in on two devices all the time, and it usually works. Once in a great while, I'll get a glitch, but most of the time I can sign in I'm using the laptop tonight, but I can also sign in with the desktop, and it works great.
The
I just
only
was
time
hoping
it
to spread
doesn't
this
work
over
is if
two
you're
screens
hosting.
and see everybody.
Ah, now
what I
that's
You
was trying-
can't
something.
host and be signed into two devices.
No, you
Well,
can't.
thank you. I'll have to keep that in mind.
I learned that myself when I was doing a dry run yesterday of the quiz. So it's kind of an interesting thing.
And one thing I learned here, Patty Nickel again, is sometimes when you come in, you are muted. So I had
Yes.
to mute myself.
That's
That
true.
that will happen when you join and it's already in progress.
Right.
And this is Joni Leonard. I want to thank you for having us back. We had so much fun last month. It was so great.
I don't have time to do
Well,
Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, it is your vice president here. Hello.
hello
Hi,
there,
Jim.
Hi, gang.
It'll be wonderful.
It's
Hi,
good
Frank.
to have you here.
It's great to be had.
Oh, yes.
As long as you're not a has-been.
I don't. Okay. Hi, Linnell.
Well,
I don't know.
hi, can anybody hear me?
Yes, now we
There you
can.
go.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this is the first time I've done this. I could see and hear everybody.
Yay.
Hey.
Good.
Yeah.
Hey.
None of the battle.
We can see you.
Okay,
My
great.
apartment isn't clean.
I even got dressed today.
Well, you look lovely.
I'm wearing a dress too.
All right. So, shall we kick things off?
Sounds good.
Let's start with our first 15. Jack French, are you prepared?
I am.
Yay for Jack.
Let her rip.
Okay. Tonight we're going to listen to the most unusual soap opera I can think of. It's entitled Wendy Warren and the News. And what's so unusual about it is that it had Douglas Edwards as the co-lead. They started off the program with 5 minutes of real news of the day from Douglas Edwards. And of course, at that time in 1947, he was also doing the main anchor job on CBS News. So he was a very familiar voice. And after his 5 minutes of news, or 4 minutes, however they portioned it out, then Florence Freeman came on, the voice of Wendy Warren. And she gave about 2 or 3 minutes of news. So by the time it ended, you thought this was a real news program. And then Wendy and Douglas would chat back and forth as to what they were going to do for the rest of the day. And she would go off on her adventure. And the next 10 minutes were the real germane portion of the soap opera. And then it would flash back at the end of 15 minutes for a General Foods commercial. And you'll hear the types of products that they were sponsoring. The show was extremely popular. It started at 12 noon, Monday through Friday, in competition with all the other news programs. Ran from June 1947 to November 1958. And the program, as far as the storyline, was always kind of a screwball one about mysterious voices and foreign spies and whatever. And we'll hear that in this program. It doesn't matter if you didn't hear what was coming before or after. It didn't always make that much sense, but the audiences seemed to love it. So let me go over and turn on the radio for you.
The coffee that's always good to the last drop brings you Wendy Warren and the...
Hello, folks. This is Wendy Warren with news reports from the women's world. But first, here's Douglas Edwards with the latest headlines.
The government rested its case this morning in the Alger Hicks perjury trial. Assistant U.S. Attorney Thomas Murphy completed his case after the third witness had testified. Today's witness, Benjamin Fearsheim, stenographer for the House Un-American Activities Committee, took the stand to say that what appeared to be a discrepancy in Whittaker Chambers' testimony actually was a mistake that he, the stenographer, had made. Federal Judge Kaufman then excused the jury of 10 men and 2 women until Monday, so the defense attorney can enter the customary motion. In Washington, Judith Copeland took the stand in her own defense again today, and again she testified that she has always been loyal to the United States. On Capitol Hill, Chairman John Rankin of the House Veterans Committee says his group will probably take up a multi-billion-dollar bonus bill for veterans of World War II. Rankin says the so-called adjusted compensation plan should solve many veteran problems. More statistics from the Labor Department. It reports an employment slump in manufacturing industry. Between mid-April and mid-May, employment fell 320,000. However, it's considered mostly seasonal. In Pittsburgh, Steel Union President Phil Murray says he's determined to get U.S. Steel to discuss pensions. The company has turned down a demand for $150 a month in pensions, but Murray says the union and the company will bargain on the point before the negotiations are over. In Paris, the foreign ministers are still deadlocked over a working arrangement for Germany and a peace treaty for Austria. Apparently, the major stumbling block is Russia's refusal to guarantee the West free access to Berlin. The church-state conflict in Czechoslovakia has risen to a new climax. Archbishop Joseph Beran, head of the Roman Catholic Church there, is virtually a prisoner of the government. Czechoslovak communist police is standing guard at the Archbishop's palace gate. Secret police have seized church records. Archbishop Beran is one of communism's bitterest enemies. And now, Wendy, what's the news today for the latest?
Well, Doug, the Dean of Sweetbriar College, Dr. Mary Eli Lyman, will become one of the first women ever to hold a full professorship in an American theological school when the 1950 academic year begins. Dr. Lyman has been elected as the very first woman faculty member of Union Theological Seminary in Manhattan, New York. Fall fashion preview shows that pockets of all kinds and sizes will be a leading feature in the ladies' wardrobe. Fall collections show pockets not only for daytime, but evening clothes as well. When a gunman entered the Pontiac, Michigan home of Mrs. M. Russell Coyle yesterday and demanded money, this quick-witted housewife handed the bandit a ham sandwich instead. He was so surprised he gulped it down and fled. Now here's Bill Plug with a word for you.
You know, even the most easygoing person won't tolerate a cup of poor coffee, and there's really no need to. Not when you can enjoy all the flavor-packed goodness of Maxwell House coffee for just a fraction of a penny more per cup than the lowest priced coffee sold. Rich, vigorous flavor, mellow, smooth goodness in every cup. That's Maxwell House. And you can credit the masterful blending skill of Maxwell House experts for this famous good to the last drop flavor. They draw on more than half a century's experience in the art of combining choice Latin American coffees. Premium coffees chosen for their mellowness, richness, vigor, and full body. Then, thanks to Radiant Roast, this superb Maxwell House blend is developed to full strength and perfection. No wonder Maxwell House coffee is so completely satisfying that it's preferred over all brands at any price. Next time, ask your grocer for Maxwell House, the coffee that's always good to the last drop.
Off the air. Oh, joy, the weekend again.
Say that again, Wendy. Me for the sure. Oh, by the way, there's a phone call for you in the control room. Bob made with the signal before he ducked out.
Oh, thank you, Bill. Don't get yourself all blistered on the beach.
I learned my lesson 2 weeks ago. See you later.
Bye. Hello? Speaking.
Hugo.
Oh. Oh, yes, of course.
I'm calling from the drugstore at 50 and Farm. You will meet me here in 5 minutes.
I beg your pardon,
I will wait for you here. Please come quickly.
but I don't understand. What do you want?
I am not prepared to say over the telephone, but we better be talking first.
I'm afraid I...
Good. I am not concerned with whatever appointments you may have. It will be necessary for you to cancel them. I will expect you shortly.
Hello? Hello? And what's this all about?
Good afternoon. There's fun.
I haven't much time. Would you mind explaining why you want to see me?
There is someone who can explain better than I. And they'll not have expecting it.
Why didn't you call me yourself?
It was not convenient. You will later on explain it sometime soon. There's a car.
And you can hear it and see what's going on.
The car ride is brief, made in silence. Wendy steals a glance at the bland, inscrutable face.
Apparently something's going on.
The face she has reason to believe of a murderer. And yet she's not frightened. There's an air of unreality to their mission. New York City, a little past high noon, in the bright sun with people and taxis and buses and all the bustle of metropolitan life.
I can't make out the words.
15 minutes later, they stand outside Madeline Marchand's hotel suite, and Madeline herself opens the door for them.
Come in, Wendy. Thank you, Madeline. I hope I may now dispense with my escort. Hugo is more than an escort. He is a bodyguard, errand boy. In short, he's perfect butler. Sorry, Hugo. I don't understand. Oh, you will understand everything in good time. Please sit down. Did you enjoy the weekend at Swanhaven? It ended rather abruptly. Yes, I was sorry for that, but Hugo explained to you that you were called back to town unexpectedly. You and your fiancé stayed away so long that Sunday afternoon you could not wait. I hope it did not spoil your visit. No. Since then, I have not been in touch with you, though I hear you on the radio. You're a charming boy. You sound the sort of person people would give their confidence, their trust. Thank you. You want a cigarette, Hugo?
Yeah.
Thank you. As I say, I have not been in touch. I have waited for you to call me, but you did not. I've been very busy with you. Yes, you know, we are so interested, are we not, Hugo? There is one thing that interests us exceedingly. I'm sure you'll be able to explain it to our complete satisfaction, Wendy. And that is a serious coincidence, shall we call it. So Hugo does not think it is a coincidence at all. He thinks it is a natural sequence of events. It worries us, rather. Madeline, I wish you'd come out into the open and say what's on your mind. You are very American. You do not like intrigue. You're blunt, straight from the shoulder. I see no reason to be otherwise. Yeah? How is it then that the Manhattan Gazette, the paper for which you work, employs a private detective to investigate the murder case? A private detective who happens to be a close friend to you. Why, surely there are some simple reasons to happen this way. I don't know what you mean. It's true. I've known Rusty Doyle for years, and he and I have worked on cases together in the past. But the paper didn't hire him particularly for this. He was hired by the trustees of Beaumont University. We know it was to be a private investigation.
Then one of the trustees called in the police.
That's right. And Rusty was still in a position to follow the case. So he offered his services to the Gazette as he's done before on other news stories.
You did not by any chance put him off to this because he's your friend, Miss Warren?
No, I did not.
How are we to be sure of that?
It is so important.
You know how important it is.
There's no purpose in bullying Wendy. She resents it, and right so. Wendy and I are friends. There's a much simpler way by which she can prove her good faith. Wendy, this friend of yours, the private detective, Doyle is his name? Yes. During the course of this investigation, he will confer with you at the office? Not necessarily, but if you showed interest, if you asked him from point to point, yes, that is what you will do. Whatever he finds out, he will pass on to us, to Hugo and myself. The eternal scientists, the police, Mr. Doyle, and ourselves. Amusing, is that? No, I wouldn't call it amusing. Just the same, you will not fail us, will you, Wendy? I can't answer that now. You'll have to give me time. I'd say that is impossible. You see, already you are indebted to us. We took you into our confidence. We made you one of our charm circle. So now, of course, you must offer some tangible expression of your appreciation. Hugo agrees with me, don't you, Hugo?
I not only agree, I am saying Miss Warren has no alternative.
You must admit, Wendy, that considerable time has gone by. And you have shown no cooperation. What did you expect me to do? Hugo gave you my message that afternoon. I expected information from you. you did not misunderstand, you're not a naive person. May I remind you that membership in our selectable group is an exceptional honor. And once you have been elected one of us, there is no going back. No going back. Ever again.
No one doubts the law of cause and effect. That means, of course, there must be a good reason behind this fact. More people buy and enjoy Maxwell House than any other brand of coffee at any price. Well, the cause of this overwhelming preference is that famous good to the last drop Maxwell House flavors. You see, Maxwell House is a superb blend of these carefully selected Latin American coffees. Manizales for mellowness, Medellin for richness, Bucaramanga for full body, and still other fine coffees for vigor. Then comes radiant roasting to bring out the full flavor of every bean. And not a bit of that extra flavor is lost. Thanks to vacuum packing, Maxwell House comes to you fresh as the hour it left the roasting oven. Not just days fresh, but roaster fresh. Yet full-bodied roaster fresh Maxwell House costs but a fraction of a penny more per cup than the lowest priced coffee sold. So much more for so little more. No wonder it's America's favorite brand of coffee. So friends, treat your family and yourself to the very best in coffee drinking pleasure. Next time you're shopping for coffee, ask for Maxwell House. Always good to the last drop. Throughout this meeting, there's a part of Wendy that watches the scene and all its ugly implications. A silent observer, cool, poised, calculating. A part that knows no fear, no hesitation, but knows if she declares the slightest weakness now, the cause for which she and Anton are fighting will be irrevocably lost. They struggle at the same time Monday for Wendy Warren and the News. Brought to you by Maxwell House. The coffee that's bought and enjoyed by more people than any other brand. Maxwell House. The coffee that's always good to the last drop.
And there we have it.
Thank you, Jack. What's the exact date of that broadcast?
It's the middle of November, 1949. I don't have the exact date.
Close enough.
Yeah. Now the guy using the name of the announcer as Bill Flood is in reality Hugh James, who was the announcer on at least 10 other soap operas, but they made him use that alias. Douglas Edwards, of course, continued very successfully on CBS News anchor until 1962, when he was replaced by Walter Cronkite. Florence
Jack,
Freeman,
was he in news before he did this soap opera?
Oh, yes. He joined CBS News in 1941 in World War I, and this show started in 47. So he was well known.
Why did he do it? Just for money, or was there did he want to be an actor?
I'm sure it was for the money, of course. And when CBS got this thing together, they wanted a real voice on there. And so I'm sure he said, yeah, I'll do it. And he got paid, I'm sure, handsomely for his 4 minutes.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I asked the date, Jack, because it's interesting. They're still talking about the differences with the Soviets over access to Berlin.
Yeah, and I could probably ascertain the exact date, I guess, with that statement.
Close enough.
Oakland, yeah. Florence Freeman, at the same time she was doing the lead in Wendy Warren and the News, at 12 o'clock in the middle of the afternoon, she was also the lead in Young Widow Brown. After he was replaced by Cronkite, Edwards went back to CBS Radio, stayed on it until 1988, retired, and alas, died of bladder cancer 2 years later He was 73 years old. Florence Freeman stayed in radio doing soaps, other shows, other programs, commercials. She and her husband finally retired. He was a rabbi. They had 3 kids. They moved to Florida in their retirement. Anything else you want to know about the show would be found in Jim Cox's great soap operas, which is the green book over my shoulder. But I want to show you one thing from that book, which is really pretty interesting and a little silly and whatever. You recall reading some of these old magazines on radio, TV, that they were always trying to get publicity shots of the people in the shows other than just holding the script before the microphone. And so you would see a picture of Bud Collyer with an apron on taking cupcakes out of the oven. Or you might see another soap opera star holding a hose and watering her garden. Well, in this case, they got both Douglas Edwards and Florence Freeman together and brought them to Central Park for a picnic. And I'll show you the picture of the picnic. You'll notice that Edwards apparently reported to the photo op in his suit and tie, and they had him take off his coat, his tie, and unloosen the shirt. And Florence, however, is in an off-the-shoulder blouse and has her feet in the lake there at Central Park.
Jack,
And
you're
that-
going to need to back up a little with the photo because it's actually your background is overwriting the photo of the book.
Yeah, I figured it would.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Oh, just for a second there, yeah.
Florence, in retirement, her husband died in 1998. She moved to Illinois to live with her daughters, and she died 2 years later at the age of 88 in the year 2000. And that concludes your first 15.
Right. Thank you very much.
Yay.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we didn't do a business meeting last time, so we're going to try to get some old business out of the way as quickly as possible. Joni is not here, but she sent me her treasurer's report and the state of the membership. Since our last real business meeting in February, we've had 8 new members and 1 new returning member, for a total of 117 paid memberships. The membership number was decreased by 1 due to the unfortunate death of Rick Reeve. Our revenue was $246.08. Our outgoing expenses, $365.35. Our current bank balance is $7,824.37.
Thanks again.
All right.
Michael, when did Rick pass away? Because I did not hear that.
Oh, I thought an email went out about that. It was very early in the year. I want to say January. We didn't find
I
out.
don't recall seeing it. That's too bad.
It was Marsha Bush, I believe, who found out about this. She contacted Rick's sister. Yes, I was sorry to hear it too. He was a good friend, a good OTR scholar, and a lot of fun to be with. And so, moving along, may I call upon our trusty recorder, Dennis Roma. Dennis?
Yes.
You still with us? Good.
I'm still here.
Very good. Would you care to read the minutes of the last meeting, please?
Oh, yes.
Now, you should have had those up.
Oh, no, I just had to switch screens. So, yes, welcome to Up to the Minutes with a club recorder and
Dennis Roma and the news.
Yes. And this is the meeting minutes for our May 8th, 2020 meeting. This is the club's first Zoom meeting, as the club's normal meeting place was closed and still is closed due to COVID-19. The March and April meetings were simply canceled. Meeting began at 7:41 p.m. Officers present were Michael Hay, President, Jim Pasquale, Vice President, and myself. Officers excused was Johnny Farrell, our club treasurer. The first 15 was not presented in the May meeting, but instead was replaced by 15 minutes of saying hello to each other. And this included members and guests from California, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Seattle, Washington. As Michael stated, there was no business meeting in that meeting. The minutes for the February 2020 meeting were not requested nor read. No reports were made by any of the club officers or the audio librarian or the print librarian. No old business was discussed. New business discussed, only one item. John Reiser was the first to suggest using Zoom again for the club meeting this month. Several others voiced the same suggestion towards the end of the meeting, and as we are finding out right now,
here we are.
Here we are. The main program began at 7:52 p.m. And Jack French presented. His program ended at 8:25 p.m. and the meeting adjourned at 8:49 p.m. Those were the meeting minutes. This is Up to the Minutes, sponsored by Maxwell House Coffee. The coffee that's always good to the last drop.
Thank you, Dennis Roma. Very good. All right, then. Edgar, we just love looking at your ear.
Thank you. Did you see, I flashed the camera around. Did you see the New York, the song, what's that song about New York, New York? We had a line of people dancing and kicking their legs up. I tried to get the full effect of the show going on here.
Oh, well, I'm sorry we missed it. All I see is your ear.
I know. Well, now you see my
right.
face for another 30 seconds. I have to keep it low because I'm around 75 people. And so I'm enjoying it, but I'm having to kind of listen to it. I can't keep it up at the normal volume, but I'm enjoying it very much.
Okay. In the interest of moving things along, I'm going to dispense with the committee reports, which I would ask kindly that if has been any activity in our print, video, audio libraries to please, I'm seeing Marsha Bush shaking her head. No, there's been no activity. If there has been any activity since our meeting, our last full meeting in February, please just email me the details and we'll compile it that way.
Oh, I was just going to say shout out to Martin Grams for taking cassettes off my hands. Yay, Martin!
Yes.
All right.
All righty. And speaking of Martin Grams, it's just about time to hand the meeting over to him for our main presentation for this evening.
All right, give me a second because I have to switch a couple of things over. And I would ask during Martin's presentation if everyone could mute their mics. Otherwise, Martin might mute everybody's mic because I'm going to make him the host.
Break a leg, Martin.
So it's up to you, Martin. But now we're good to go. You can take it away.
Yeah, the problem I learned from doing a slideshow at another Zoom meeting is that if I'm doing the presenting and someone is not muted and their sound comes on, it picks it up on my microphone and it echoes. And so everyone hears 50 of the exact same. So if everyone can mute, if they don't know how to mute, let us know. And by the way, before I begin, my wife says hello.
Hi.
There's Michelle.
Hello, Michelle.
Yeah, we've been enjoying the comforts of staying home more often. She's now doing crunches twice a day now, Captain in the morning and Nestle in the afternoon. And okay, now she's telling me to behave. They're all on mute. That's why you don't hear laughter. Okay, last thing, we're going to do a slideshow presentation. It's on Excel. And there's a nice little feature. I don't know if anyone's aware of it. If you move your mouse on the screen that has my face, you'll see a little blue thing that says mute, and then you'll see 3 little dots. Click the dots. And if you click the dots, it'll actually have something about pinning pin that, and it actually puts the entire slideshow presentation on the big screen instead of seeing a tiny little screen, because you're going to see photographs and you don't want to see them in thumbnail image size. So hopefully everybody can click pin video. I assume everyone's got that.
I'll just interrupt here for a second, Martin, that on my screen, it is in the upper right-hand corner, and it is a button that says Speaker View and Gallery View. So if you click Speaker View, it will make a full screen of Martin's image.
Ah, cool. There we go. That way everybody can see it all on a big screen.
Or the active speaker option if you're using a tablet. Just saying.
I think there's multiple ways. All right. And if this works, let's see. Whoops.
Good, Martin, there's still a lot of people who are not muted. You might want to hit mute all.
Okay.
And that way everyone's mic is muted.
Mute all. Where is mute all?
That should be at the bottom. You know where your mic is. Well, under participants, bring up participants, and that hit at the bottom of the list of participants, you have an option to mute all.
Done. There we go. All right. There, perfect. Close. And then if we have this here. Wait, this point now I will not be able to not be able to hear anybody. So I'm going to assume everybody can see the computer screen and the entire big screen. So what you should be looking at is a big black screen with a big logo of the Green Hornet in the dead center. And hopefully that is working. Is that what everybody sees?
No, we still see you.
No, it's not up.
We just see your face, Martin.
Oh, hold on. Dummy me. Hold on. What I did. Your screen.
Now it's up.
Now it's up. Now just mute all of us again.
All right. Mute. Share. Mute all. Participants. Mute all. There we go. That should work. I gotta have one person tell me whether this is. Can one person unmute and tell me that you do see the full screen?
That would be me. I got it. Your full screen is up.
All right, then everybody should be muted. We should be all set to go. All right. There we go. So to start with, when the Green Hornet, this is going to be a history of the entire television, radio, comic books, and Cliffhanger Serials. The radio program ran from 1936 to 1952. Crossing over in the timeline, there were comic books in 1940 through 67. There were 2 Cliffhanger Serials filmed by Universal Studios from 1940 to 41. And then a television series from 1966 to 67, which ran 26 episodes, technically half a year. We're going to cover all 4 of them, mainly the radio program, because this is a radio group, but we will try to cover some of the others briefly as it pertains to the radio show. The Green Hornet does have similarities to the Lone Ranger. It evolved. It was not created at the beginning. So every so many episodes, Franz Stryker, who's pictured in the center, as he did the radio scripts, would create a new element and implement it. And if it didn't work, he'd drop it after a few episodes. And if it worked, they'd maintain. So the program kind of evolved over the first 6 or 7 months of the show, not like they had a continuity at beginning. George W. Trendle, who's pictured on the bottom left, was the producer in Michigan. That is his desk right there at the Maccabees building. One little aspect you'll get a kick out of, if you look on the photo of George W. Trendle, you'll notice his desk is a glass top, and you can see a little bit of a reflection, that white reflection. You're going to see that in a few other photos, publicity photos, which gives a tip off because he was the only one in the office who had a glass desk. I guess when you're president, you can afford that. The man on the bottom right is James Joule. He was the director of the program. He was also the director of all the dramatic work programs at the radio station. Normally, because of dramatic appeal, he would contact Franz Stryker and he would ask Stryker, hey, can you create this? Can you do that? Can you implement this? Mainly for the production aspect. So many of the little features on the Lone Ranger and the Green Hornet, you have to give credit to James Joule because he would ask Stryker and Stryker would implement. And then, of course, George W. Trendle would make suggestions based on business matters, and that would be implemented. So over the years, as people always said, who invented or created the Lone Ranger and the Green Hornet? Some say George W. Trendle, some say James Joule, some say Franz Stryker. And over the years, they all took sole credit, but in reality, it's actually all three. Here's the fascinating story of the Lone Ranger, which I'm assuming everyone has seen. This is an example of how it formatted. The photo on the right is an ashcan edition, which was basically one of the earliest illustrations of the Lone Ranger. You can see the bandana mask that covers from the nose down to the chin. And then on the left, you see a coloring book from the late 50s, mimicking the Clayton Moore type of costume that he wore. Interesting, though, the belt he's wearing is actually a Brace Beamer belt. When George W. Trendle sold the Lone Ranger to Jack Rather in 1954, among the properties, Rather got Brace Beamer's Lone Ranger belt. And after that, the Lone Ranger wore a belt that had all those silver bullets wrapped around his waist. But it's a case in point how the character evolved. And on radio, it was pretty much the same thing. One of the trademarks of the Green Hornet in the earliest of the years was a seal, also described as a sticker in many cases, which was left behind at the scene of many of the Green Hornet's adventures. The idea of the seal originates from these novels, Jimmy Dale, also known as The Adventures of Jimmy Dale alias The Gray Seal. The first novel is recommended. It's clearly Green Hornet without the mask. It's kind of part Boston Blackie in a sense, but the idea of the Green Hornet came from this. Now, for Lone Ranger, it was kind of difficult and debated. For Green Hornet, it's clear as day. There's inner office memos from George W. Trendle to Franz Stryker and James Joule asking him to read the books and make a character similar to this, but also try to make it a masked vigilante that's always doing good and not really bad. So this was the type of pulp fiction that it was inspired by. On the left is another picture of James Joule, as you see. Joule was in charge of casting. Joule was in charge of script writing when Franz Stryker fell behind. So there are a few scripts in which Stryker never wrote, although he takes credit for writing most of the scripts. Al Hodge, pictured on the right, was the first Green Hornet. He was replaced by other actors as they left one by one. The program premiered in January 1936. Advertisement on the left, Frank Bressy sent this to me. It's from the newspaper in Detroit announcing the premiere of The Adventures of the Hornet, not the Green Hornet. And also they mentioned Cato the Jap Butler, if you see that in the advertisement. Interesting factor, this promotion was sent to the newspapers about 2 or 3 days before it went to print, and that premiered 2 or 3 days before. And then, of course, the updated one said tonight. It goes to show you that they were still revising and tweaking what the program really would be by the time they broadcast. Incidentally, while they mentioned Cato was a Jap Butler in this advertisement, on the radio show, he was only referred to as an Oriental for the first 2 broadcasts and then became Japanese with the 3rd broadcast. Jim Irwin on the left was Irish. He was Michael Axford in the original Adventures. He took ill later on and had to bow out. He started as Jim Irwin started out as Mike Axford, not on the Green Hornet, but on another radio program at WXYZ. That was called Warner Lester Manhunters. And the program was kind of a ripoff of Fu Manchu characters with Nayland Smith going after Fu Manchu. Warner Lester had a girlfriend, and he had a bodyguard sidekick friend named Michael Axford, and it was played by Jim Irwin on the left, you see. Here he's pictured as Mike Axford, the character with the bowler hat and the cigar, and he's at the newspaper station. What ended up happening is they were doing Warner Lester Manhunters 6 nights a week. And Franz Stryker could keep up with the scripts, but he was borrowing a lot of elements from Pulp Fiction. The arch nemesis on Warner Lester Manhunters was a mad Oriental who also had an evil Oriental daughter. Hence, it was Fu Manchu. And it even spawned a series of its own called The Crimson Fang and also Dr. Claw. And the programs lasted a short bit. But Warner Lester Manhunters went down to 3 days a week when they created the Lone Ranger. And then for the Green Hornet, by then they had Warner Lester twice a week and they wanted to replace the program. So the final episode of Warner Lester Manhunters, Warner Lester and his girlfriend decide they're going to go get married. And Mike Axford says, well, I've got a friend. He's over in New York City and he wants me to babysit and bodyguard his young son named Britt. And of course, that was the pickup where the announcer would say at the end, tune in next time, same time slot with your favorite friend, Michael Axford in The Adventures of the Green Hornet, which goes to prove how popular Mike Axford was. Photo on the right is the earliest photo incarnation of the Green Hornet with the mask. I admit that looks like a silly mask. That is Al Hodge, and it says the Green Hornet and Felon. That's actor Jack Petruzzi, who was at this radio station. I've been to the Maccabees building, and I will tell you that photo is taken on the roof of that building. So I don't think he would have wanted to take any more further chance to go leaning farther out. It's very well done, but there was actually some paperwork that accompanied the photo in George W. Trendle's archive that said the photo was taken December 1937, and it was indeed Al Hodge and Jack Petruzzi. So sometimes if you can find the legal clearance for a lot of these photographs or the photographers, you can get some more detail. The woman pictured on the left is Lee Ullman. She was related to James Joule, which is how she got the job. She played Miss Case on the radio program practically from day one all the way to the last broadcast. Problem was Lee Ullman was not very good in being in pictures. So while here's a picture of her and Jim Irwin, it was never published, but it did show up in some fanzines. Jim Irwin, by the way, ended up dying on June 24, 1938. After about 2.5 years of the Green Hornet being on the radio. There's only a very few number of broadcasts that have the earliest that survive in recorded form that have Irwin. He is perfect doing the Irish accent, and it's a darn shame because afterwards people tried their best, but no one could do perfect. The character was written out for 6 months prior when the actor suffered a stroke, and then he came back to reprise the role. But there was a time where when he was gone, an actor named Haggerty came in and played his brother, Timothy Axford, because his Irish accent was not exactly the same as Jim Irwin. After a short bit, Timothy Axford was written out. Then they received a phone call. Sounds like Mike Axford is returning. He's going to be coming back. And he's telling them, Miss Case over the phone, tell Britt I'm coming to the station. I'm coming to the newspaper's place in a few days. I'll arrive by train and I'm looking forward to coming back. And so the character had a very colorful career. So what they did here, as you see a picture, is Al Hodge as Britt Reed. That is Jim Irwin as Mike Axford. That is Ruth Dean Rickaby, who was also known as Mustang Mag on The Lone Ranger. She is playing Miss Case. And it was these photos, not Lee Ullman, that they were using for the publicity. Notice the desk here. It's a beautiful shot. The desk has the reflection. That is the glass desk. That is clearly, they borrowed the desk from George W. Trendle, went into his office and did the photo shoots. Mike Axford was determined to be a crime reporter for the Daily Sentinel. And eventually on October 11, 1936, about 10 months after the show started, they decided to do a change. Instead of being a bodyguard, he became a crime reporter for the Daily Sentinel. He received his own desk. He shared Miss Case's office. She felt she was being punished. She never got along well with him. She was not pleased with the arrangement. And on February 11, they gave a joke. They came in and Britt Reed arranged for a typewriter to be on Mike Axford's desk so he can start writing articles. Turns out he was a crime reporter, but he was not writing articles. So it continues. On June 24, 1939, Mike Axford phoned Britt, mentioned he's coming home. July 4, he returns to his post as if he was never gone. Man on the left is John Todd. He was Tonto on the Lone Ranger radio program. He was also Dan Reed, Britt Reed's father, from the very first broadcast all the way through the last broadcast. It was a recurring role. His father loved California and preferred to live in California. So when he retired and gave the Daily Sentinel over to Britt Reed, he told Britt Reed, "It's all yours here in New York. I'm flying back to California." So every time he returned, it was every so often. And it wasn't every day, but when he showed up on the program, it was like a landmark monument. Everybody's doing a little extra because no one gave Britt Reed serious consideration for him being an editor of a newspaper reporter, but Senior Reed had a good bit of respect. If any of this sounds like a soap opera, there's a lot of other recurring characters like Clicker Benny and so on. On the right, you see that's Lee Ullman posing with a Green Hornet display, obviously because of her relation to the program. Which all brings us over to Kato, played by Raymond Toyo. The recent issue of Radio Recall has an article that debunks and clarifies whatever happened to him after World War II. Following Raymond Toyo leaving the program because of the war, whoever replaced him, and I say whoever because there was more than one, they sounded American trying to do a Chinese accent versus a Chinese accent trying to speak American. Hence why those early broadcasts are gems, because it really does sound like a Japanese servant. On the program, Kato taught Britt Reed jiu-jitsu. He would fetch Britt Reed milk because one of the sponsors was Jersey Milk. He created the Hornet seals that Green Hornet would leave behind, and he would always be working under the hood of the Black Beauty during the entire first year of the program, trying to make it even super fast. The buzzing that comes through that sounds like a Hornet from the car, that was something Kato did to the Hornet unintentionally, and for some reason he could never keep it going and never correct it, so they just left it as a trademark. Hence, on the radio program, the car never looked super speedster like the one in the 1960s TV show. Instead, it looked like a plain car. So Britt Reed, being the wuss that he was, he would end up going in and doing something like muscling in on some gangster's office, and Kato was always off the side. He was either outside ready to shoot the lights out, or he was at the Black Beauty ready to get it started. So police would often drive past the Black Beauty, not even realize that was the Hornet's car, because the only way they could tell was that distinct buzzing sound. So anyway, it turns out on August 3, 1937, there's a reference to Kato actually being away for a while. He left the apartment for the evening to spend a few hours with a female companion. No further reference was ever made, but it turns out Kato did have a romance life. On the right is something very unique. In the process of reading all 1,015 radio scripts a few years ago of the Green Hornet, because not all the recordings exist, the autographs on the back of the radio script came along to Raymond Toyo. I didn't know what this was. I knew it was his. I sent it to Ben Omart, whose wife is Japanese, did not tell him what it is. And I said, if she could tell me what this says, and he came back and says, it says Raymond something. It's Americanized. That's the best she could come up with. It was routine back then for radio scripts for actors to put their name on the top page of the front cover. That way, if it's between broadcasts for East Coast, West Coast, they go off to lunch. Between rehearsal and broadcast, no one had a concern about whose script was who. So those also constitute autographs. But sometimes during rehearsals, they doodled. And in this case, that picture there, I wish I had saved that script in hand. I ended up giving it back to the archive. I would have loved to have talked to him about keeping that one. May just be one of the only legit autographs of Raymond Toyo, who played the role of radio's Kato. And right now, they're still on the lookout for that particular script. On September 3, 1936, Kato had a lucky token for a number of episodes. Kids could write in to get them. Those lucky tokens are not easy to find. Being so small as they are, they were lost. An estimated 66,000 requests came in on the first day. So there's apparently a lot of those lucky tokens. Beginning with the episode, The Dog That Barked, broadcast November 22, 1938, Fran Stryker introduced a new catchphrase for the Green Hornet. Much like the Lone Ranger's Hi-Yo Silver and Get 'em Up Scout, Kato introduced Britt Reed to Seiko, is how you pronounce it. Seiko meant great in Japanese, according to the show. It was used every time the Green Hornet would run into the Black Beauty and say, let's roll, Kato. He would say, so Seiko. And after about 4 or 5 weeks, Seiko was dropped. So apparently it was not well received, or it just didn't catch on. Other interesting tidbits about, this is also Trendle's desk. You can see the reflection. Another interesting tidbit about Kato. December 1937, for a number of broadcasts, Kato expressed displeasure of the fighting in the war overseas because he was Japanese. On July 18, 1938, he was referred to by the announcer as Britt Reed's Filipino servant. Some people have been going around saying, and yes, it's been in print for years, that Kato became Japanese, went from Japanese to Filipino the day after World War II. That is not correct. And beginning with June 21, 1941, an episode titled Man Wanted for What?, Kato was clearly referred to as Filipino, and every broadcast following that for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then, typical of Franz Stryker, not wanting to annoy the listeners, he figured if they haven't heard it by then, they'll never know. But most likely, if they missed an episode or two, they would have heard the reference. And then it turns out right after World War II, when U.S. entry into World War II, it turns out the rumor was it went from Japanese to Filipino. They basically revisited the Filipino, but that never started until about late January 41. The scripts were already done and the decision was not made yet for that. Interesting bits of trivia. December 1, 1936, a character named Muggs was hiding out in New York City to avoid arrest and conviction from the Midwest. He was a shady character, similar to Damon Runyon-esque type character. Muggs would leak information over to Britt Reed so that he could write crime reports, and in reality, as the Green Hornet, he was going out smashing those crimes. It was one of the handful of broadcasts consecutive in December of 36 where they make reference that the events of the Green Hornet and the adventures take place in New York City. I always thought it was Detroit. Some people thought it was California. This only runs for about 3 or 4 episodes, and then the references are dropped, and no further reference except around 1947 when they say that Father was coming from the West Coast, and at one point some of the crew went out to the West Coast. So it clearly, the stories did take place in New York City. In another episode, October 1936, Britt Reed referenced that he had a sister named Susan, and she was coming to New York City. And it turns out after about 2 or 3 broadcasts, Susan never showed up. It's not uncommon. Franz Stryker often would write reference to a character 3 or 4 episodes in a row before bringing them into the show, especially if they're going to be a recurring character. The only thing I can think of is the actress was unavailable, so they just dropped the whole idea. But technically, by lore, Britt Reed had a sister named Susan. Going through here, December 17, 1937 is the earliest surviving recording of the Lone Ranger. Turns out it was done not just as an experiment, but also for a Green Hornet episode. Sometime in early January 38, there is an episode in which the Green Hornet climbs through the back window of a bedroom of a judge's house. And the judge was listening to the Lone Ranger on radio. And the radio script clearly indicates playback transcription. Hence the reason why, before they started recording the Lone Ranger on a regular basis, they ended up recording one in December 17, 1937. Now, it just turns out, we found out WOR in New York had a scheduling conflict in September and in April of 37 due to some time zone issue. And for about a week or two, in both of those months, they recorded the Lone Ranger. So there's actually recordings, they're all half shows, that exist from April and September 37, clearly indicate that are now the earliest existing recordings of the Lone Ranger. As for the Green Hornet, they did not start recording them until a little more than 2 years after the show premiered. So the first 2 years of the Green Hornet does not exist in recorded form. They started recording a few episodes of the Green Hornet at random, and they did those in April 38. and then regularly on May of 38. And by end of May 38, the transcription discs were out of sequence originally, but they put them in correct sequence and consecutive going forward by the end of May. There are no official script titles for the Green Hornet until August 238, but for the transcriptions, they did assign titles, but only on the transcription disc labels, not on the scripts. So an example would be May 24, 38. The script has no script title, but There Was a Crooked Man is the script title for that particular broadcast because it was on the label. The photo on the left, sorry, I got a cat on my lap. Out of the way. Hold on, off. Bad kitty. All right, a Green Hornet, what you see is an advertisement from a newspaper or in magazines. These were not sent out to trade journals that the general public would get because only radio stations would be paying for the rental of the transcription discs. So these were advertisements where people could write into them and ask what the price would be to rent the discs. And that's how the show ended up began recording in 1938. Interesting little trivia. January 36th, there's an episode about a villain named Barnaby Leach. Cato committed a cold-blooded murder. It's the only time Britt Reed and Cato committed a murder. And Cato ended up apologizing, and they laid the ground rules for what they were going to do. And thou shalt not kill became apparently commandment number 11 for them. Regarding the two Big Little books you see pictured here, never on the radio program was there ever a reference to how Britt Reed met Cato, but in one of those books, there is an origin. Turns out Britt Reed went out to the far places of the Orient, and Cato accidentally fell off a boat in the water, looked like he was going to drown. Turns out he can't drown, he can't swim. So Britt Reed jumped in, saved him, and it turns out he was so skilled, he brought Cato back to New York, and that is how Cato and Britt Reed came to be. Interesting side note, if you look at the photos and compare them, on the right is an H.J. Ward painting. On the left is a reproduction, not the exact painting, used for the cover of the Big Little book, which is a little bit unusual because when George W. Trendle commissioned H.J. Ward to do a number of oil paintings based on the Lone Ranger, Ned Jordan's Secret Agent, and the Green Hornet, you would think that they were going to actually use the exact painting or the image from the painting, since they did for many of the advertisements. Over the years, there's a number of rare collectibles that people are always looking for. The Green Hornet Loyalty Club pins. There's the Adventure Club. It says a new Universal picture that was used to promote one of the Cliffhanger serials. There's also a Lone Ranger. There's also a Green Hornet cap. Haven't figured out where that cap came from, but apparently they were selling them. And of course, there was a number of comic books, all ranging in various prices depending on where you go. Unlike the comic books, which were adapted from most of them adapted from the radio scripts, Green Hornet was not. So they were completely new adventures, sometimes breaking continuity. Young kids did not care. It just helped build up the popularity of the radio program. Also, during World War II, the comic books featured somewhat politically incorrect villains that we were at war with at the time. And of course, I'm sure they made reference to Cato being Filipino because they were fighting Japanese. 1940, they did two Cliffhanger serials for Universal Studios, The Green Hornet and The Green Hornet Strikes Again. Kay Luke was Cato, Warren Hall and Gordon Jones played Britt Reed in each of the two Cliffhanger serials. At this point, George W. Trendle had an issue with Republic Pictures over the two Cliffhanger serials they did of the Lone Ranger, so he thought maybe Universal would pay more money to license them, and so that's why they ended up leaving the Republic. They never got the Lone Ranger, but they did do the Green Hornet. And in case anyone is curious, Cato was Korean in those Cliffhanger serials. And there's some advertisements there. That is Gordon Jones right there on the left with the Green Hornet mask. These are unique. I would not have believed these even if I bought them on eBay or saw them on Hake's auctions, but these were in George W. Trendle's archives, which we went through the files. When they were going to do the Cliffhanger serial of the Green Hornet for Universal Studios in 1940, he went naturally to Franz Stryker and said, what does the mask look like? Because they need to know what it's going to look like visually. And at that point, Franz Stryker looked George W. Trendle in the eye and said, gee, we just mentioned he wears a mask. So they got someone to commissioned someone to do a whole bunch of sketches. These are proposed sketches of what the Green Hornet mask could have looked like. Surprisingly, not one of these looks like anything like the Universal Studios rendition, which only leads me to suspect that Universal just came up with their own and George W. Trendle approved it. This one's quite amusing, but it's also the closest to that December 1937 photograph where Al Hodge was wearing that mask. This one I thought was quite hilarious, of the Green Hornet mask. It's supposed to tie a string around. And there's a picture of the one that was used in the Cliffhanger serial, which, by the way, was not plastic. It was cloth so that the actor could breathe. And there's a picture of that one on the other Cliffhanger serial because they had two masks, two different actors. The radio program was a difficult sell. In the 1940s, it turns out there was just too many problems. Parents were complaining kids were being inspired to commit crimes because they were listening to the Green Hornet. In this case, look at the newspaper advertisement on the left. You see WXXX000 on your dial and empty time. These are what you call plates, and they would be replaced by whatever the station and time would be. So you could find 15 renditions of these in 15 newspapers, each with a different time. But you notice it has a Western motif on the top where it says wanted by the police of the underworld. They probably used that one for the Lone Ranger as well and just replaced one word for another. There was also official seals. This was done in 1939 because at that point it was decided they needed to trademark the character. You could not copyright characters, you can trademark them. So if they created a seal, they could use that to hold in court in case anybody wanted to masquerade as the Green Hornet at a rodeo or a circus or at the movie theaters, which Trendle was adamant nobody should do that at the theaters. And also, in case you've ever wondered why Challenge of the Yukon changed its name to Sergeant Preston of the Yukon in 1950, it was because Raymond Muir said, hey, if we can trademark the character, we might as well have the name of the program to ensure trademark property. So a lot of these logos that they created, this one's in 48, was just to go ahead and reinforce their trademark status by claiming they had more than one trademark. I love this seal. Getting into the later years, 1947, the Lone Ranger connection with the Green Hornet was November 11, 1947, an episode titled Too Hot to Handle. Those all episodes in that little story arc exist. There was a connection that, yes, Dan Reed, Britt Reed's father, was the nephew of the Lone Ranger, and that connection was established. It's also one of the biggest trivia people like to do when you bring up the Green Hornet and so on. Although there is an interesting connect the dots. And this one, I think most of you are going to jaw drop. There was another radio program from 38 to 43 called Ned Jordan's Secret Agent. And that's his girlfriend, Judy Medwick. There's a collector who has these H.J. Ward paintings. He's trying to pass them off as Britt Reed from the Daily Sentinel and Lee Ullman. It's not. They're definitely Ned Jordan. But I'll give you an interesting trivia. February 21, 1941, there was a 5,000-watt dedicatory program over WXYZ. It was a one-time special, never transcribed. We do have the radio script, and we're hoping we can dramatize that at our convention soon. It turns out Ned Jordan bumps into, on a train, Britt Reed. And he says, there's a letter for you from somebody you need to read. They left it for you. And he reads it. And it was a special program. It was to ask people to donate money to pay for war bonds and so on and so forth. But as a tribute, the person who wrote the letter was the Lone Ranger. Keep in mind, this is years before they actually do the official connection on the Green Hornet program. And it turns out there's a flashback where the Lone Rangers telling people how to be patriotic, etc. And at the end of the broadcast, Britt Reed says, well, I wonder why some man back in the Wild West would be leaving a letter behind for his great-grandnephew. And it turns out Ned Jordan turned to him and said, maybe there's something in your family lineage that you do not know about. That is the first indication that there was a connection between the Green Hornet and the Lone Ranger, because Dan Reed was never even a character on the Lone Ranger until December 1942 story arc. Hence, the Dan Reed and Britt Reed character was never connected to the Lone Ranger by Reed name. But it gets more fun. You all know about the Warner Lester Manhunter, where Mike Axford is connected to the Green Hornet. Try this one out. Another WXYZ program from 32 to 35 called Thrills of the Secret Service featured a female hero called Patricia Dare. Her boyfriend was named Bob Barclay. There's an episode in which they end up bumping into a man, get this, Warner Lester. Bob Barclay is the same Bob Barclay who later in 1950 had his own program, Bob Barclay American Agent. So if you connect the dots, they're all kind of like a Marvel superheroes, all interconnected universe. The only one we have not been able to find a connection to yet is Sergeant Preston of the Yukon, which makes us wonder if there's an episode where the recording does not exist, but the script does, that connects somehow even Lone Ranger, if not, to Sergeant Preston of the Yukon. 1952, George W. Trendle paid to have a unaired TV pilot made. This is a conception sketch of the gas gun. I have no photos from the pilot. The film, we believe, was destroyed by accident. It was not preserved well. The cost of the entire TV budget was $15,000. George W. Trendle was being very, very cheap, trying to get people to bid against each other, producing this pilot. It was so bad, to give you an idea, a situation comedy was $40,000. That's reusing the living room sets and the office sets over and over. It was so cheap that apparently, according to letters he included with the 16 millimeter film sent to prospective sponsors, apologizing for what they are about to see. Apparently, the Green Hornet wears the Lone Ranger mask. The Green Hornet's Black Beauty does not speed. George W. Trendle promises to make good on that if it turns out they want to sponsor the show. Needless to say, the program never was sponsored. Steve Dunn, by the way, played the role of Britt Reed in the Green Hornet. 1954 in August, George W. Trendle, there's that glass desk again, signed over all lock, stock, and bond of the Lone Ranger to Jack Rather for $3 million. Technically, $3,164,000 if you want to go down to the exact share price. End result, he also offered Green Hornet and Sergeant Preston to Jack Rather. He said that'll be just one additional million on top of the payment. Jack Rather said, I'll just settle with the Lone Ranger. 2.5 years later, Jack Rather went back and bought Sergeant Preston of the Yukon for $1.25 million, but he did not want the Green Hornet. And as a result, the Green Hornet remained the property of George W. Trendle until the day he died, passed on to his son, now passed on to granddaughter, who's now looking over the property and trying to make some money off it. Man on the left, by the way, far left, is H. Allen Campbell, the business genius of them. And the man on the far right is Raymond Muir, who was the attorney for the Green Hornet Incorporated, Lone Ranger Incorporated, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, we all know that in 1966, there was a TV series with Van Williams and Bruce Lee. George W. Trendle went over twice to actually look over everything, make sure everything's being done. Van Williams, many, many years later, was very candid and said, I remember him being very frail, coming off like he was extremely wealthy and a multi-billionaire or a millionaire. Everybody kissed his butt. And he said as soon as he was gone, everybody was quite pleased. He ruled over the TV program with an iron fist, and it got to a point ABC did not renew. It was never canceled. It just was never renewed beyond the 26 episodes. Out of desperation, he wrote a letter to Bill Dozer, and Dozer was very candid and said, you know why the TV show lasted 26 episodes? You. He explained to him, you kept saying we can't do this, we can't do that, you can't have gadgets. Look, people want James Bond and Batman. That's your fault. That's your problem. At that point, George W. Trendle signed a letter stating he would have no longer future creative control over the TV show. If they promised to bring it back, he was in desperate need to get it back on. And as a favor, Dozer put Green Hornet and Kato on the Batman show. It was not used to cross-promote the TV show. The TV show was already canceled. The intention was, after it airs, let's see how many youngsters who watch the TV show write into the network and say, hey, let's see, hey, it's great to see them again. Love to see them back on TV again. Total number of letters that came in, 4. Of course, if you type in the Green Hornet on the Google images, usually you see Bruce Lee, and Van Williams, Bruce Lee. You get the idea. He became a cultural icon in some places across the country. In other countries, the show, Green Hornet is called the Kato Show. There was 4 episodes made into a movie. He also received top billing, if you notice the movie poster on the left, a 1974 movie. And in the 1990s, Quentin Tarantino did a movie called Kill Bill Volume 1 and Kill Bill Volume 2. And in Volume 1, if you look on the right, Uma Thurman is wearing the actual suit that Bruce Lee wore in Game of Death. And notice in the background, all the men were wearing Kato masks. Gotta love Quentin Tarantino. And of course, everything is Bruce Lee when it comes down to it. The show has never come out commercially, legitimately yet. DVD and Blu-ray overseas. I love the fact the Blu-ray on the left has a DC logo for DC Comics. I hate to say it, DC does not own it. They should have put 20th Century Fox logo on it, but I don't think the fanboys really care. 1970s, there was the Brown Hornet on Bill Cosby's The Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. About 10 years ago, there was an unaired TV pilot lasting 3 minutes of a computer animated series to bring back the Green Hornet. This is a still image from that 3-minute pilot. It never sold. It's a darn shame because it looks pretty good, and I think it would have ended up being a very good program based on the producer who I talked to and the ideas they were going to have. Then in 2011, there was this movie, Green Hornet. We don't talk about that movie. Definitely not talk about it. I will say this. You knew it was doomed when Seth Rogen is on a late night TV show and they're asking about the movie because it's cross publicity. Seth Rogen was asked about the radio show, and my ears perked up and I went, ooh. And Seth Rogen's response was, the radio show sucks, but Bruce Lee is cool. We're going to be superheroes. I hate to tell him, but that Green Hornet was a masked vigilante, not a superhero. There are still comic books and short story proses that are being published today. The Green Hornet is still being mass marketed. These little fellows are on my shelf. They're from Pops. They're these little action figures that just sit up on this. I love these things. I think they've done 4 different ones. And for everybody who has to have every collectible of the Green Hornet ever made, right now on Amazon, you can get for adult role play this Green Hornet superhero dress costume. And yes, if you take a close look, officially licensed Green Hornet costume. Relax, they also have one for Kato. They also have them for Lone Ranger and a sexy Tonto outfit. The one with the Lone Ranger comes with a pair of handcuffs. Of the 1,015 radio broadcasts, a little over 500 transcription discs exist. This was from the warehouse that Fred Flowerday had. These are Green Hornet transcription discs. This was taken by Terry Solomson, who managed to have the disc shipped over to his house. He since transferred them, and of course, Radio Spirits has been putting them out on CDs since then. The radio scripts are basically of collectible value because they contain material that you will not find anywhere, especially since the recordings do not exist. They go for very large sums of money, especially if there's an autograph on the front. Notice the top left says Dan Beatty, one of the script writers. But every performer ended up writing their name on the front, so it depends on whose name on them. They can go for anywhere between $100 and $300 for an original radio script on eBay today, and that's a single script. Back in April in 2018, Dick Tracy met the Green Hornet. Green Hornet made a crossover in the newspaper strip, which was awesome. Radio Spirits is still putting out Green Hornet radio shows in box sets. As long as they keep selling, they will keep putting them out. Terry will not put them out if Radio Spirits stops, but I think Radio Spirits has maybe another 10, 12, or 13 sets possible, and they do 3 a year. They have about 10 or 12 sets, maybe 13 left before they've gotten all the existing recordings out in collector hands. So I do recommend supporting them and buying them. And a very recent, the last bit of tidbit, is that Amasia Entertainment back in January secured the film rights to do the Green Hornet. There was a competitive bidding situation. They have not started casting. I would imagine as a result of this COVID-19 incident, they're not even in pre-production right now. It may have gotten put aside temporarily. I would love to see a new Green Hornet movie. I would love to see a 1930s radio rendition, but that is all dependent on whatever the producers decide to do and the script writer. I'm hoping it's going to be faithful. And then there is pretty much a quick summary with some cool tidbits about the Green Hornet. And I'm going to see if I can unmute everybody now. So if anyone has any questions, they are more than welcome to ask. Or if they can.
Martin, this is Edgar. Do you have a favorite Green Hornet? Is radio your favorite, or are you emotionally with the Bruce Lee TV show?
Oh no, TV show is okay for what it is. It's kind of apples and oranges. I don't think you can compare them, but I really do love the radio rendition as it's more of a pulp feel. It's more of that mass vigilante lurking in the shadows aspect that I really like.
Oh.
Did I unmute everybody?
Yeah, I think you did.
Martin?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Yeah. Question. Donovan Faust was the Green Hornet for the shortest amount of time. He had been an announcer before he was the Hornet. Why did they discontinue Faust as quickly as they did?
We have not found any inter-office memos to indicate why. We do not know. I can only assume if Charles Livingston, the director, did not approve, George W. Trendle did not approve, or Faust was asking for too much money.
Okay.
Usually when there's very short castings, that's one of the three reasons that seems to keep coming up on any of the shows that originated out of WXYZ.
Thank you.
Martin, you said all of the scripts are survived?
Yes, in one way or another. Terry has all but maybe, I think, 80 out of the 1,015, but we were able to find all but one or two at the Library of Congress. Every script was submitted to the Library of Congress for copyright, but the Library of Congress did misplace a few scripts. So you can go to the Library of Congress and read them. They're right there in DC at any time if you wanted to.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Well done, sir. Well done.
As
Here,
always.
here. Excellent.
Yes, thank you very
Excellent
much.
program.
Now, did we determine that we are going to be able to, we have the technology to do the quiz, or is that going to happen next month?
No, we have it set up, Michael. Believe it or not, it's a joint effort. Sally Stevens is going to run it. Jack French put together the questions. We only put together 10 questions, and they are on a poll. So what I'm going to do is is to change the host once again to Sally Stevens this time, so she can actually initiate this poll. Where did she go? Sally, where are you?
Your pen and paper ready now.
Just a minute. All right, Sally, you are the host. So you are in charge. You can mute people if you want, or leave the mics live so people can make rude comments. But you're welcome to initiate this.
Okay,
And
so-
I think we agreed, to encourage people, especially those who do not have the video aspect, to take, pen and paper and write their answers.
Put your answer down. We have the poll option, so you may select it, but it will not show individual results. So if you want to also write down what you pick as we go through, then you can see how you did at the end. And then at the end, we'll also be able to see as a group how we did in picking our answers. All right. So I am going to read the questions and the answers because I know some of us are on audio. So if you are able to mute just to keep the excess background sound down, that would be awesome. I'm not going to mute you in case somebody needs me to reread it or has a question or didn't hear or something. So I am about to launch the poll. I think I've given you sufficient time to have gotten your paper and pencil by now. I've been stalling. You got your pencil and paper? All right, here we go. I'm going to launch the poll, and I request that Wendy tells me that we can see it. Can we see it? Wendy's giving me a thumbs up. Okay, we are ready to go. Excellent. Number 1. Which radio detective was named for an item of money? Jack Penny, Candy Moolah, Johnny Dollar, Nickel Carter. Which radio detective was named for an item of money? I'm going to count down till the next question. Number 2. Who created the Quiz Kids? Joe Kelly, Kuis Cohen, Nyla Mack, Bill Paley. Who created the Quiz Kids? Counting down to the next question. Number 3. What color was the Lone Ranger's horse? Gold, silver, bronze, white. What color was the Lone Ranger's horse? Number 4. What was Jack Benny's birth name? Bernie Rosenberg, Josiah Bronkowski, Benjamin Kubleski, Jacob Bernstein. What was Jack Benny's birth name? Counting down to the next. We're on number 5. And keep in mind, if you're answering in the poll itself, you will move faster than me. Number 5. Ovaltine sponsored which kids' radio show? The Bobbsey Twins, Captain Midnight, Nancy Drew Mysteries, Batman and Robin. Ovaltine sponsored which kids' radio show? Number 6. Which radio series did John Dunning describe as usually involving, quote, an ordinary guy caught up in a situation that intensified and soon became unbearable, end quote? Escape, Quiet Please, The Witch's Tale, Suspense. Which radio series did John Dunning describe as usually involving an ordinary guy caught up in a situation that intensified and soon became unbearable? Counting down. Number 7. Why were the women's 15-minute daily dramas called soap operas? The singing on them was pretty bad. Many of the top shows were sponsored by Procter. All the storylines stressed cleanliness and purity. No particular reason. Why were the women's 15-minute daily dramas called soap operas? Counting down to the next question. Number 8. What year did NBC Blue become the ABC network? 1941, 1943, 1945, 1947. What year did NBC Blue become the ABC network? Number 9. The radio series Dragnet took place in the city of Sheboygan, Wisconsin, Los Angeles, California, Walla Walla, Washington, Medicine Hat, Wyoming. The radio series Dragnet took place in the city of And number 10, the final question. Sam Spade's private eye license number, which he recited on every show, was 319675, 173596, 136975, 137596. Sam Spade's private eye license number, which he recited on every show, was.
Can you click on Ron Langston? Will that give us anything?
That's all the questions. Does anyone need me to reread one? So far, I show for people who have entered into the poll, 17 people, which is about half of us. I will leave it open for another couple of minutes so that everyone has an opportunity to enter it if they choose.
Excellent job as quiz mistress, I guess.
Excellent reading.
Press questions in a very even tone as not to give away the answer.
I noticed
This
that.
is very good practice.
I feel like I'm watching Disney's auto animatronic quiz mistress.
And I'm feeling very relaxed.
As you should. Thanks for playing.
It's very soothing. Can I call you at about 2:00 in the morning and you can talk me to sleep, Sally?
I would be happy to. All right. Looks like we now have 21 of us who have answered in the poll. That is 63% of us. So let's see, that's about one.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Sally Stevens and the Quiz.
Stay tuned for poll results.
Oh my goodness.
Just call her Alexa.
I'm
Alexa.
sorry. I don't recognize that name.
And Dennis hasn't even cracked a smile sitting standing next to you.
This guy.
That guy. Yes, that guy.
Yeah, the guy in the upper left who looks an awful lot like Jack Webb in the DI right now with that haircut.
I like that hair, huh?
There you go, Dennis. Now you're smiling. Good to see.
That's a lot better than they did last month.
All right, I'm going to give us about 30 more seconds if you would like to answer in the poll because nothing's changed in the past 45
seconds.
You now have 20 seconds left to answer in the poll.
Now she said a James Bond movie.
You now have 10 seconds left to answer in the poll. Please finalize your answers in the poll at this time.
And proceed to the nearest cash register.
Would you go over the oxygen masks again?
Exits are located over the wings and should there become a drop in air pressure,
Oxygen masks will drop from the ceiling.
Be sure to put your oxygen mask on before helping others.
Oxygen masks will drop and dangle in front of your blue dead faces.
And if you don't know what to do with it, I don't know how to help you. All right. And I think, somebody else snuck in there at the end. Well done. We're going to now end the poll, and I'm going to show you the results, but I'm going to read you the correct answers. So this is just going to show us what we've answered. I'm going to read you the correct answers. Poll is ending.
And you can also tell us the percentage of people who submitted the poll got
22
questions
people
from.
participate. We had 68% participate in the poll. And I'm going to share the results and read the answers.
Are you getting all this, Dennis?
You should be seeing the results on the screen. I am going to read through the correct answers.
What's the margin of error?
There is
Well, for number 2, it looks pretty even.
number 1. Which radio detective was named for an item of money? No, it's not Candy Moolah. It's Johnny Dollar. And 95% of us selected Johnny Dollar. Number 2. Who created the Quiz Kids? Joe Kelly was given 36%. 27% went for Lewis Cohen. 9% went for Nyla Mack. And 27% went for Bill Paley. Our correct answer is Lewis Cohen.
No, it's Joe Kelly.
Well, why? Okay, I think
Isn't it Joe Kelly?
Is it Joe Kelly, Jack?
Oh,
Or do you have it highlighted?
Or is it Lewis Cowan? Okay.
Joe Kelly.
He's got it highlighted as Lewis Cohen in my answer sheet.
All right,
I don't get to play.
Don't ever argue.
I was confused because there's one answer that's a different color on the bars, but that's just the one that got the most answers.
I believe that is correct. That's why I'm giving you
So
the
more people got this wrong than right.
why I'm giving you the right answers.
Some of us got it more wrong than others.
I'll say.
Number 3. What color was the Lone Ranger's horse? 23% of us said silver, but 77% of us said the correct answer, white.
23% of us can't read instructions.
Number 4. What was Jack Benny's birth name? Bernie and Josiah weren't even options in our poll. Jacob Bernstein was given 14%, but 86% of us picked the right answer, Benjamin Kubelski. I like Jack Benny better.
Most people
so did he, I must say.
As the quiz mistress, I get to comment. Number 5. Ovaltine sponsored which kids radio show? 91% of us got this right. Captain Midnight. Yay! 9% of us wanted it to be Nancy Drew. Too bad it never had a radio program. Number 6. Which radio series did John Dunning describe as usually involving, quote, an ordinary guy caught up in a situation that intensified and soon became unbearable?
I got it right.
45% of us said Escape. 18% of us said Quiet Please. 9% of us said The Witch's Tale. And 27% of us said Suspense. The answer is Suspense.
It was Suspense, did you say?
Suspense is the correct answer.
Well, I got that one right at least.
Yeah, one.
Number 7. Why were the women's 15-minute daily dramas called soap operas? Well, no one thought it was because the singing was pretty bad or because the storyline stressed cleanliness and purity, which is what I thought. But 9% of us thought there was no particular reason. However, that's not the case. 91% of us got the answer correct, which is that many of the top shows were sponsored by Procter & Gamble. Number 8. What year did NBC Blue become the ABC network? We were pretty evenly spread on this one. 23% said 1941. 27% said 1943. 23% said 1945. And 27% said 1947. The correct answer is 1945. Number 9.
Picked the wrong end of the war.
The radio series Dragnet took place in the city of... It was not in Wisconsin or Washington. And nobody guessed that. One person guessed Medicine Hat, Wyoming. And that was not correct. Correct answer, 95% of us got correct. Los Angeles, California.
This is the city.
And number 10.
This
Dan
is the
Quayle. State private eye license number, which you recited on every show, was, this again was fairly evenly spread. 14% picked the 319, 18% picked 173, 27% picked 136, but 41% of us, and the correct answer is 137596.
Got that one right too.
Yay.
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 All right. I make a motion that no matter who writes the quiz, Sally always delivers the questions. Whether it's
I will second that.
I vote yes.
Very nice job, Sally.
All
This is
in
it.
favor.
Thank you very much. Well, it was all of
Excellently
Jack's
well done.
win, but I appreciate his confidence in me to deliver it, though, I was a little nervous. But
You've
did
never been
just
nervous
fine.
doing this in your lifetime. You're great. It's just awesome.
That was fun.
That was
Great
fun.
stuff.
I don't think I knew most of the answers. I maybe got half of them.
Terrific.
I didn't look at the answers till the end.
Well, on that very high note, I also make a motion to adjourn.
If we must.
Motion is seconded.
No.
I reluctantly third it.
Thank you all for a very entertaining hour and a half. This was
Great program, folks.
This was a
Great
blast.
program, Michael.
That was great.
Thank-
Yes, thank you,
thank you.
Michael.
Yes, it was very enjoyable.
Thank you, Martin
Thank you,
Grams.
Jack,
That's
Martin,
great.
and Sally.
And thank you, Sally.
Well,
thank you, everyone.
Jack, for a great
And
quiz.
Jack-
And
Awesome
especially, and to Jack, of course, and to Wendy for hosting. Thank you very much
Wendy.
for
Yes,
actually
thank you, Wendy.
putting out the cash for the program so that we don't have to.
Believe me, it's a very modest amount of cash, and the return is well worth it.
Thank
It's so nice to see
Absolutely.
everybody.
Absolutely.
It's
really
just
is.
so great to see all of you. I was, when we had 2 meetings canceled in a row and we were coming up on May, it was just like, oh, no. This situation cannot continue. I need my MWOTRC fix.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So 4 weeks from tonight is July 10th, which would be the time, the normal time for our July meeting. So assuming we are not in the middle of stage nothing, let's plan to meet back here again 4 weeks from tonight.
Sounds good.
Okay, we can all
Yay.
zoom in.
Yay.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I think it's such a wonderful, the programs, and actually this kind of format for a program like Martin's really works well because, when we meet together at the church, it's hard to see the projections and all of the rest. And then, of course, there are the travel considerations. So,
Exactly.
so
Church, they can throw stuff at the speaker.
Assuming
well, yeah, there is that.
yeah, I'm
but
sure
you
it's
weren't
tough for
here,
those
John.
of us who are holding the phones to their ears so they can hear.
They could put it on speakerphone.
Like my good friend Edgar's iPhone, as
Yes.
Oh,
Your
well,
phone.
it
yeah.
says on the screen.
Yeah.
It's your
Have
phone.
iPhone will travel.
Have iPhone
What
will
are the
travel.
flashing
There
red
we
lights
go.
behind you?
Oh, did you see the red, green, and blue lights? I was showing that earlier during the big finale. But yeah, no, there's a big light behind me. That's
What is going on? Are you being
where I
arrested?
am?
Yeah, where are you,
I'm
Edgar?
at Elvis Lodge in Fairfax
Oh,
for
you're
a
in Fairfax.
blowout Tom Saputo and Friends open mic.
Ah,
Ah.
so this
Really,
is
you're distancing socially?
yes, it does.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So send your presentation concepts in, folks, on 2 box tops.
I'm sure.
And a
Jim
label from a
Pasquale
jar of
really
Ovaltine.
appreciate them.
And a $20 bill.
Hey,
Send money to 8803.
Rick passed away of cancer, I believe. He's been fighting it for a long time. Yeah, he's had it.
We did not know that.
Who's that?
I remember.
Okay, Marcia Bush, if you're still on,
Yes.
can you tell us about how you found out about Rick?
It was John Reiser called me and told me that they'd had a return of the newsletters, and he was getting concerned. So I happened to have his sister's phone number, and so I called and spoke with her, and she let me know.
So when did he actually pass?
In January.
Did she have any memorial service or funeral service?
Not she. If they had, they'd already had it, but we were not aware of it.
Oh, I understand.
It's a shame.
That's too bad.
He was good people.
There's another, on a sad note, for those of you that have been in the club a long time, Jim Rapolt passed away, and when was that?
The end of February.
End of February. He had diabetes and kidney failure. And he put up a good fight, but he just couldn't make it at the end.
What Jim and Sarah were among the sound people. Now, did they help train Mark and Marcia, or did Mark and Marcia train Jim and Sarah?
No.
Neither. The 4 of us just got together whenever there was a play to do. Jim was marvelous at making the sound effects. The squeaking door is his. The train track device that I use, he developed first, but then when he moved away, he took it with him. So I made another one. You
made it for the Mr. Lincoln and the Young Ones, right?
Right.
I'm not sure which one it was first, but that we certainly used it on that one.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was great fun being able to get together with them and to do the sound effects with them, and we just had a lot of fun. We've kept up with them where they live, and it's just sad to see him pass.
I want to thank you all for having me from Louisville. I am a paid member, and I look forward to attending a lot more meetings on Zoom. I really enjoyed this tonight, and I just want everybody to know that.
Thank you, Charles.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Indeed. Thank you.
Gonna have to figure out somebody can do this when we do meet live again, so that the out of town people can still enjoy us.
Yeah, that's
If we can figure that out.
Yeah. The next frontier, I agree.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it's poor reception down there because you're buried underneath the ground.
Yeah.
Oh,
You still have to have access to the outside. Yeah, but that's even hard down there. Have your cell phone coverage, yeah.
Side spot are those MiFi devices or something.
But you still, like I said, you still need access to the Verizon network, which is tough down there.
Would anybody like some good news?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's have
As of
it.
Saturday, I've got a daughter-in-law.
Oh, congratulations.
They had a wedding with 25 people.
Oh,
Were you one of them?
I was one of them.
That's terrific, Phil.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Yeah.
They're going to do reenactment sometime in September, hopefully when things open up with a lot more people. But it was just close family for this time.
That's
This is
great.
the official one.
It got the job done.
Yeah. I did tell some people at the beginning of this when there's only a few of people on, I found a podcast of basically sound items. It's called 20,000 Hertz. And it's about a 20-minute, half hour. It's free on the Apple podcast system. And like they had a two-parter on Mel Blanc. They've had other ones on various radio sound effects. They had a great one on the Star Wars, the original Star Wars, and those sound effects. It's worth a listen to all of us who like all of this kind of stuff. If you want to go dig it up, it's a great little podcast.
Thanks, Jeff.
Welcome.
Has anybody else been getting a clinking sound like somebody's practicing their banjo? Guess not.
No.
No, but I'm sure Michael can grab his guitar and serenade us on out.
You didn't like my banjo playing there? You
I
love my
think your
banjo?
house is haunted there.
I could get my banjo out of the closet and do it. I haven't picked it up in 20 years. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to continue talking, please feel free to do so, but I've got to sign off. I've been up since very early this morning. Take care, everyone. God bless. See you all next month. Bye-bye.
Be well.
Bye.
Great seeing you again.
Good to
See you next
see you.
month.
Bye.
Seeing all of you.
Thanks. It was
Yeah. And thanks for the extra time yesterday to go through this and make it
Yeah.
happen.
No problem.
You know we're going to call on you next month.
I know, I'm a little nervous, but you know. No,
Now-
I don't see individual votes.
That's
and-
interesting, Fred. I could make it because I typed in the poll, and so I apologize for typos. They're entirely mine, not the author of the questions. But I made it an anonymous poll, so you wouldn't shame anyone who got the wrong answer.
Thank you.
So that's why I did it that way, because as somebody who is not all that adept at answering that, I mean, I get more now than I used to when I first joined the club, but we could do it so it was by person who actually, but my instinct is to keep it anonymous. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, well, I hope your answers were correct. Of course.
If you voted twice, how did it go 50-50, I wonder?
Skewed the results.
Vote early, vote often for a surprise party.
For sure.
Surprise party, vote for Gracie.
There you go. Perfect. But any suggestions anyone has for, ways to improve this, in terms of hosting and all of that, I think definitely before we start the first 15 in future, we'll mute everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, actually, secretly, the link to this meeting, the minute I scheduled the meeting, the link was live. So for instance, there are a couple of people who tried to log on to the meeting like 3 days ago. And when Sally and Jack and I did our dry run, and also when Martin Grams and I did a dry run, we used this particular meeting's link. So, but I think I made it possible for people to join the meeting before the host in case people. It's live. It's live. In fact, if you were to go into this link in a week, it would still be live. I don't know why. But anyway, my feeling is to create a new link for each meeting going forward.
Wouldn't you have to let people into the meeting though? So once it's just.
Well, I had the option. I could allow people to join before the host, which is what I did for this meeting. And I think it went a little more smoothly because there were a couple of people who got there before I did at around 7:15. So anyway. Right. Because the other piece of that is when someone logs into it ahead of time, I get an email as the host and the person who set it up saying, this person is waiting for you in the meeting. And I got one of those at midnight a few nights ago. And sort of like, yeah, no.
Have fun waiting.
You're going to have a long wait.
See you next month.
Yeah, really. So, I mean, it's just kind of one of those quirks of Zoom that I probably haven't mastered accurately or effectively yet. I'll see. I keep working on it. It's a work in progress.
Well, it's awesome. Thank you for doing it.
Thanks for
Well, it's fun.
Wendy.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Dennis, I see you.
Yeah.
You shaved.
Yeah. In fact, I shaved the last meeting.
I look like a heavy Hitler.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the mustache was making me feel like it was warm, and so it made me feel like I had a fever, which is not how I should be feeling at this time.
Yeah, definitely not. Probably
At least you didn't shave it off the day after the last meeting. You waited a while.
No, actually, yeah, it was the day after the last meeting.
Oh, really?
He's like, I did it during the meeting. Couldn't you see me? Get this thing off.
It was all the rude remarks. I apologize, Dennis.
Because Michael Hay was saying, check out Dennis for the mustaches. Yeah, well, don't like it too much because it's going away this coming weekend. And yeah, and so the meeting was on Friday, and then Saturday I just shaved it off. So.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I think a lot of gentlemen have hairier visages during this epidemic. And I'm still waiting. But
yeah. My hair doesn't look like it's gotten longer, but it is. But it also has gotten curlier. Can you tell?
Lucky you.
Curly.
I wish. Mine just gets straighter and thinner.
It's longer.
What you really want to know is how many people on camera are actually wearing something below their waist.
It's not that kind of a meeting.
Very casual.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna wear sweatpants, but I've got pants on. Like, give me a break.
Yeah, they may be sweatpants, but
okay.
I was at a meeting earlier today for it was a big meeting with arts organizations sponsored by the Bloomberg Philanthropies, and the fellow who was running it, Michael Kaiser, and I were chatting before the meeting, and he said, I'm all dressed, I have a tie and a coat and everything. And I said, yeah, but what are you wearing from the waist down? And he said, I'm wearing nice pants. I said, yeah, but are you wearing shoes? And he said, oh, you got me there. No shoes.
Shoes. Who needs them?
Shoes. Who needs shoes?
Apparently there's been a few people, newscasters and weather forecasters, working from home that have been caught. One weather forecaster I seen, he dressed up nice with a jacket and tie, and I guess they went away from him, and he put his foot up, and he could see that his knee was bare. He was wearing shorts.
Well, it's like that famous story. I think it was Walter Cronkite, who I think one time he wasn't feeling well, and he was dressed perfectly, from the waist up, but he was not wearing trousers at his anchor staff.
At this point, I think we will leave you. Everyone.
So long, folks. Have a nice drive
It was
home.
a lot of fun. Yeah, we're gonna head off too. So
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining.
Thank
It's
you.
great.
thank you very much. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be great.
Quick note to Martin.